Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you guys the best settings for Roboquest for both console and PC. Also, we'll be going over the settings I use for both keyboard and mouse and controller. So in the game tab, most of it is really preference. The rotate map and rotate minimap is mostly preference, but whenever you do look at the map, it's easiest if it's static, so you don't have to worry about your orientation whenever you do look at the maps. The onomatopoeia is basically the letters that pop up when you shoot or reload. You could turn this off if it's too distracting, but I'm to a point where I'm just used to it. Also, you want to turn off camera shake. It's something I do in every game I play, just keep camera shake off, motion blur off. But according to this game, if you do experience motion sickness, you want to keep the setting on. I do not have motion sickness. I don't know how this would affect someone that has it. The cross network play is good to keep on, especially if you're playing at certain hours that have low peaks. Having this turned on, you'll have a better chance of finding players during low peak hours. You want to keep your crosshairs to the center of your screen, just because if it's on a lower third, you're going to have some accuracy issues, and it's also going to throw you off if you're coming from a game that has center crosshairs, or if you play another game that has center crosshairs. Dynamic crosshairs basically symbolize and show you how far the spread of your gun is. So having that visual representation is really good and great to have. Crosshair color, you want to keep it a color that's easily visible across the entire game. The Roboquest default color is perfect, and the crosshair type is perfect. Again, you have this crosshair or point. I like to have it at the Roboquest default. The opacity, I like to keep it at 100 so I could see my crosshairs at all times. Alright, for the controls, I'll start off with the keyboard and mouse. The mouse sensitivity is really up to you. But for me, I like to keep it at a lower number, and I try to make it feel how the sensitivity feels for all the other shooters I play. There's a baseline I have, and I like to have it at a lower number. Again, it's preference, but the game is fast-paced, so having the sensitivity at a higher number could be more beneficial. The relative scope sensitivity, I like to keep it at 100 as well, because if it's lower, you could be more accurate, but it's going to be more confusing because if you're expecting to play on your mouse sensitivity, and the relative sensitivity is different, it's going to throw you off unless you're like a pro gamer that's completely used to this. Just keep it at 100, and the same for horizontal speed and vertical speed. For the gamepad sensitivity, I like to keep it at 46 for horizontal and vertical. Even in other games, I like to have it around the middle, like a 5 out of 10. And the relative scope sensitivity is the same thing I said for keyboard and mouse. You want to keep this at 100 because if it's at a lower number or a different number, you're going to be used to your baseline sensitivity and it's going to throw you off. Also, if you're on a standard controller, whether it's a standard Xbox controller, standard PlayStation controller, or standard Switch controller, your dead zone should normally be at around 20, but if you do not have any stick drift, 10 is really good. It just means that your thumbsticks will be more responsive, and this is something I learned from playing other competitive games. And I use a Razer Xbox controller, and the Razer controllers are very, very rarely get any joysticks. They're very durable. So it really depends on your controller. Now, the gamepad magnetism and stick strength really are based on your preference. I know some people turn these on 0 to start and move it up until it's at a comfortable number. I like to keep this at 50. However, gamepad acceleration is the one you want to completely turn off. And this goes to the keyboard or mouse users as well. You see mouse acceleration, you always want to turn it off no matter what you're playing, what type of peripheral you're using. And I'll show you why. So at 0, I'm using my controller for this. At 0, my sensitivity is at its baseline. It's completely consistent. Now when I move it to 100, at first, when I move the thumbstick, it's at the baseline sensitivity. And if I keep it held, in any direction, it'll go faster. And this makes it really hard to get used to your sensitivity and be accurate. And it's just an inconsistency that will throw you off, and it's really hard to get used to. I watched a pro gamer or ex-pro gamer who turned coach go over the mouse and gamepad acceleration topic, and ever since then I've been completely convinced to keep it at 0 no matter what you're using. Now for your modes, most of its preference, auto reload is always beneficial to have on always. Sprint mode, whenever you're outside of combat, you're going to be sprinting, so might as well keep this on auto. Crouch mode is preference. Yeah, I'm hardly ever crouching, but in most shooters, I like to have this on hold and have an extra button for toggle, but you can only have one option in Roboquest, so for me, I'm choosing hold. Scope, same thing, hold. Now for the keyboard and mouse inputs, I've changed the crouch to mouse 4 and the second ability to mouse 5. And for whenever I want to use the regular keys, I have primary to Q, secondary to E. They're the easiest to access, closest to WASD. I also moved any binding action I do not want to accidentally hit onto backspace, and backspace is also a button I'll never use. Drop weapon I'll never use. If I have to give a weapon to someone, we'll find a weapon that I'm not already using, pick it up so they could pick up the weapon I had in hand, and then go back to the weapon I normally wanted to use anyway. So drop weapon really isn't a necessary feature. I was experimenting with the weapon 1 and switch weapon. I had them both bound to 1, but weapon 1 is going to take priority. But I use a mouse wheel anyway whenever I do switch weapons in video games. I know it's a bad bind to have, but I got so used to it over the years. Again, it's really your preference. I have my interact to F. Some games have interact to E, but since we have our ability to E, my interact button switched to F. And the other most useful binding is screenshot mode, and it's very situational, but whenever like those camera guys flash you, and you see that overlay that kind of blocks your vision, you hit the screenshot button and you'll be in screenshot mode, and it'll take away any overlays affecting your vision, but it'll keep the black and white effect. But this way you can still see everything and not be affected. Now for your video, it's all really dependent on your PC settings, but the most important thing that you can change is your field of view. Most of the time you'll want to max it out to a realistic setting, and the field of view 130 is perfect for Roboquest. You can see more of your surroundings on your screen. Also, if the ragdoll effect is too distracting, you could turn that off. And also, it could have an impact on your PC performance if you do not have a beefier system, so keep that in mind. And then we have this sound. The sound is really preference. If I'm streaming, I do turn this down to 30. But again, that's your preference and how your audio setup is. And that right there is the best settings for Roboquest going into 2024.